Welcome to Guitar Gavel, a place for people who love guitars. These are conversations with musicians, guitar enthusiasts, techs, and collectors about their guitar journey and their love of the instrument. Thanks for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe button, share with your friends, and be sure to sign up for our twice weekly newsletter at guitargavel.com. Hey everybody, welcome to the Guitar Gavel podcast. I'm your host, David Still. Thanks for tuning in. I want to say a big thanks to everyone that's watching or listening. Thank you for your time. It is your number one asset. It's a big deal that you would sit down and spend some time in the car or in the gym or at your house watching and listening to the podcast. So appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. And if you like what you hear and like what you see, give us a thumbs up, give us a 5-star review. Thank you so much. My guest today, going across the pond once again, is Adam Waters. He is in England, kind of up near Scotland, if I understand this setting a little bit, but he can clarify or not. And Adam, thank you so much for your time, man. Looking forward to hanging out with you today and looking forward to hearing your story.
Yeah, thanks, David. Thanks very much for having us on. It's my pleasure to be here. And yes, close to Scotland, but still England.
Let's clarify. I hear it. So Adam is a friend from LinkedIn, but it's also a friend of Ian Cohen, who has been a podcast guest before and is a contributor to Guitar Gavel's Lick of the Week. He's a wonderful player, a wonderful person, and he and Adam work together. So Ian, I'll give the quick backstory. He hits me up, and he's like, "Dude, these are my words, not his. Dude," he's like, my colleague Adam. He's like, "You need him on the show." And you need him as a guest for the Lick of the Week. So we got him on the podcast. Thank you, Adam. And then, Adam and I were talking earlier. I've also got him on the hook for a Lick of the Week. So now you are officially on the hook for Lick of the Week at some point. Yeah, this is great. So that's my connection to Adam, and I take Ian's word for it and take it seriously. So here we are, man. Again, thanks for your time and thanks for
thank you for letting me be on. It's a pleasure.
This is great, man. So we're recording. It's morning here. It is late afternoon in his hometown, and actually sun should be going down soon. So it was like we got artificial sunshine, man, hitting you in the face, because that is not the case, right?
That is right. Yeah, artificial sunshine. Unfortunately, the actual sunshine is non-existent right now. So we'll work with what we've got here. Yeah, and it's only about 4:00 in the afternoon. Yeah, you're kind of just about to turn 4:00.
Dark. Yeah, it's a hoot, man. And it's a morning here. Nonetheless, man. All right, so we'll jump right in. So we'll look at a few guitars. We're going to talk about your guitar journey, your story, and wherever this goes, man. That's the flavor of the podcast. So always lead in with kind of talk about when you first started playing, Adam. Your first guitar, how that came about, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, no problem. So I first started playing when I was about 9 years old. So I've been playing, I'm 26 now, about to turn 27. So yeah, about 17, 18 years, which is quite a long time. I think that's quite young to start, really. As a bit of a backstory to it as well. I used to, when I was a kid, being English and a guy, we absolutely love our football. So when I was a kid, I was big into football, and you guys probably know it as soccer, but so I did that from about the ages of 4 to about 9 or 10 years old. And I mean, I wasn't the best at it. I was good enough to get away with it, but the older that I got, the other guys around me kind of got better than me, and I was spending more and more time on the bench as a substitute. And my mom and dad, well, mainly my mom, to be fair, I think I always remember, like, she was like, "Is there nothing else you want to do?" Because I think she was standing there every Sunday morning freezing for me to play football for about 5 or 10 minutes. And there was just the time just sort of went on. And there was this one Sunday morning that this is my recollection of it anyway. I came home and my mom was like, "Is there nothing else you want to do? Because you're not really enjoying football anymore." And I was like, "I don't know if I want to play guitar." And the minute that I said that, my dad's face just lit up, kind of thing. Because there's a bit of context. My dad is he's a guitarist, but he's not the best. He had a bit of an accident when he was younger, and he was a miner, and he got the ends of his fingers sliced off, and it sort of impaired him playing a little bit. But he's loved his rock music his entire life, and just seeing guitars around the house and stuff, I never really thought much into it until this one day when I was asked, when I was about 9 years old, and that's sort of how it started. I quit football from that point on, and the next thing I knew, I had a guitar teacher arranged, and guitar lessons were about to start at 9 years old.
Pretty awesome. Yeah, it's all right. So if your dad's a guitar, he's a player, clearly he's going to be enthusiastic. Is he like, here, you should learn on this guitar that is mine, or did he like go to the store and just hook you up?
Well, yeah, he got a little bit carried away, actually.
Yes.
Yeah. So there was very much Adam wants to start playing guitar. Well, we'll see, because obviously I'm still young at the time. We'll see if he gets into it before we buy him a guitar. And that lasted about 3 days. And then he had actually came home with a guitar for me to start learning on. So he did go out and buy me a guitar to start. Yeah, what a guy.
It really helps when your parents are into music if you want to play music. Yeah. All right. So you remember what that guitar was?
Yes, I do. I've still got it.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to make you full screen. Let's take a look.
It is this guitar, which is, I got some playtime for the first year or two of me learning, but to be honest, it's rarely been touched since. And this has kind of inspired me to like dig this back out and make this a project guitar. So I'm planning on sort of getting a new bridge, some new pickups, a new nut, tuners or whatever. But it's a Ibanez Geo GAX 30, and it's got a super skinny neck, which was absolutely brilliant for learning to play. And obviously when I was just little, I've got tiny little fingers. But so that was my first guitar that my dad came home with all those years ago. And it's like I say, I haven't had much use for it in the last few years, and it's kind of been sat away. I think the strings are dead because I've not changed them, and the fretboard's dry, and it needs a full setup and a bit of love, to be honest. But sort of doing this podcast has inspired me to sort of dig that out and maybe do it up a little bit, because I'm hoping that maybe one day if I have a son or a daughter that wants to start learning how to play guitar, then maybe they can start on the guitar that their dad started on. So
that's great. And Matt, yes, now you're on the hook for also giving that, new set of strings, oiling up that fretboard, and falling in love with it a little bit. And what a great, Ibanez is one of my favorite brands, period. And that Geo is a great entry-level guitar. And on top of that, it looks killer. When you're like 9, like you brought that home, you're like, oh man, this is heavy. Like,
I remember when my dad came home and the guitar is like almost the same size as me, because I'm not really a big guy. I'm quite small. And as a 9-year-old kid, he comes home with this full-size guitar, and I'm like, yeah, like I just want to rock, But that's my first guitar that he came home with, and I've had guitars in the past and I've got rid of them, and but I'm still glad that I've got a hold of this one. I think there's something just with it being the first one that I think I'll always have it, and probably pass it down, even if it's not the best guitar in the world. It's absolutely not. Back in the day, this was probably about £90, and that's a lot of money to spend on somebody who's hasn't even strummed a string yet.
Yes.
But I'm probably never part with it for that one reason, to be honest.
Absolutely, you shouldn't, like you said, and a family heirloom maybe if you have a young guitarist in the crew at some point.
Yeah.
So when you were starting out, clearly young guy, maybe fast forward just a few years, what kind of music started to interest you as you got closer to your 12, 13?
Yeah, so I started out, and when I first started out, I was very inspired by pretty much whatever my dad was listening to. I remember we used to go in the car, and he used to just put on like the Sex Pistols and stuff on. It was back on tape in the day, and he still put the tapes in the car. And I never really got into like wanting to play that music, but there was always a side of me that loved the rockier sort of thing. So when I started to learn, it was very much just picking up the basics. And very quickly, as a lot of people do, it gets to, you're getting the hang of certain things, and now you want to try and get your chords down. And what better band to do that than ACDC?
Yeah.
So, but again, I'm quite and this will probably come around to this a few times in this conversation, but I am quite an obsessive guy in the sense that I don't just do a bunch of things half-heartedly. I do one thing. I'm a perfectionist, and I do one thing wholeheartedly. So when I got into ACDC, like I got into ACDC, like I was walking around the house like in shorts, a blazer, a tie. I got an Epiphone SG was my next guitar, and for about the next 2 or 3 years, I just spent it rocking out to ACDC. It was learning every song. I remember I've still got the DVD somewhere. I need to dig it out. There was an ACDC Plug Me In DVD, and it was like 2.5 hours long, but it was concerts all the way from like 1974 or 5 when they started out, and all the way to like the early 2000s. And I was just obsessed, man. Like I lived and breathed ACDC and it taught me a lot because, and this again, we'll probably come on to this as this conversation progresses, but every single phase of guitar that I've went through has taught me something different, to the point where now where I'm at, I feel like I'm at a place where I'm just an accumulation of like multiple different phases, and that's factored into my playing, you know. But yeah, I mean, it was straight on to sort of picking up the basics, learning the chords, ACDC for like the next 2 or 3 years, being around like 12, 13 years old. And then, as all things do when you obsess about it for so long, that slowly diminished. And don't get me wrong, I still absolutely love ACDC, but the obsession died down, and then it was on to the next thing. So
when the obsession died, did the SG go to the grave with it, or did you hold on to the SG and
the SG survived. It was my only guitar that I had with humbuckers. There was more guitars added to the arsenal as time progressed, but the SG survived. I don't have it anymore, but yeah, it survived. I sold it about 5 or 6 years ago.
Oh yeah, you kept it for a while then.
Yeah, I kept it for a while. Yeah. Did
you play any bands as you got into high school?
I did, yeah. So in middle school, which was so how old was I? It was about the ACDC time. That's when we started forming a band. And there was a couple of I had a mate who played drums. I had a mate that played bass, and there was me on guitar. And then we managed to get another one of my friends started picking up guitar and went to the same guitar teacher. I was sort of like, as soon as I started, I wouldn't say that I was the pioneer by any means, but as soon as I started playing guitar, it just so happened that like there was loads of other people that started playing guitar, and they all ended up going to the same guitar teacher as me. So it kind of like created this, like, we were known as the Bandies in school.
Yeah.
And that label never died until the moment I left high school. But yeah, in middle school, we started forming a band, and yeah, it was obviously I'm trying to push a lot of ACDC at this time. But then I started branching into other things as well, because you kind of just play ACDC songs. So that's when I started discovering the likes of like Lynyrd Skynyrd, and to this day, one of my favorite bands. And I kind of get that from my dad, because he's absolutely loves Lynyrd Skynyrd and Ronnie Van Zant, you know. But it started branching out into a bit more southern rock stuff, and then it started to get a little bit heavier as, you know, Enter Sandman by Metallica started creeping into sort of the band setting, and that sort of sparked the next phase, which we can go into if you want. But
what was the next? So you went metal, or
full metal for the next 5 years. So yeah, again, ACDC kind of done that thing, zoned that out, got the chords down, playing all these rock tunes, loving it. Bit of Free, bit of Lynyrd Skynyrd in there, and then Enter Sandman crept in, and I was like, I always knew this song because this was another song that my dad had on tape that he used to put on in the car, and obviously started picking it up, and I was like, oh yeah, I love how like this heavy this is. So I started checking out more Metallica stuff, you know, and that is when the Metallica obsession was ignited. And yeah, so spent the next 4 or 5 years sort of, it was more of a metal phase, but the first 2 or 3 was just hell bent on Metallica. So I got a Kirk Hammett signature in this time, and I got an RG, an Ibanez RG Prestige, which was like my main guitar for until like 4 or 5 years ago, to be honest. but I absolutely loved it. And we started from this at this time as well. I was sort of leaving middle school, and I went into high school. So we had a few more people that were getting a bit more experienced on guitar, more experienced on drums, bass. So the amount of songs and difficulty of songs that we could cover was sort of expanding as well. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I was heavy into Metallica, you know, all the Master of Puppets stuff, the Ride the Lightning album, some of the Injustice for All stuff. I remember as well around this time we joined there was a local thing that was set up as we started high school, and it was called Rock School. So like it was like rock school, but it was like rock school, like it's cool. Yeah. And it was just basically a place for like a bunch of people around the Northeast area to just come into this place and just like hang out with the instruments. You know, you got put in bands, but luckily the band that I was in with all my mates from school, we all decided to join. So my band was already formed, but there was people like that were coming from the outside areas that were getting put in bands. And then you basically went every week and you got told a song to learn. It was like, this week your song is Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer, for instance, and you would go away and you would have to come back and learn Living on a Prayer, and then they would watch us, all these bands, perform Living on a Prayer, and then whatever band they thought sounded the best, or they liked the sound of that band playing that song, they then designated that song to that band, and then at the end of about 3 or 4 months of doing that, we had like 2 or 3 songs for each band, and then we went to my closest city, which is Newcastle, and there was like an O2 Academy there, and they would rent out the stage at the O2 Academy for the night, and all of the bands would get up and play their 2 or 3 songs on a set list, and like all the parents were there and friends, and it was like a little gig. It was absolutely unbelievable, to be fair, when I look back at it, because as a 14, 15-year-old, and you're rocking out on a stage and you've got a little crowd there, it was great.
I don't mean to interrupt. That's an amazing concept. I don't know who was like, let's do this, but that could be replicated all over the world. Man, that is really, really cool. I thought you were going to say whatever, they would watch the band, and whoever was the best out of this band, they would take them from another band and then make new ones. But I like the concept of whichever one, you know, latched on and sounded best on that song, that became theirs. Yeah. Wow. That's really clever.
It was a brilliant concept, like not just like from a musical standpoint for being like for encouraging young musicians, you know, but like from a social standpoint as well. Like you got to hang out and meet new friends and stuff. It was absolutely brilliant. And then at the end, that gig, so like we did this for like 2 or 3 years. Okay. I'm not sure what happened to the concept. Like it doesn't exist anymore. It phased out. I'm not sure what happened after we left. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if you know the band. There was in this band inspired Metallica. Actually, there's a band called Venom.
Mm-hmm. From like the early, familiar, but yeah, know the name.
From the late 70s, early 80s, I think. And the guitarist from that band was the guy. He was from the northeast of England, and he was the guy running it. Wow. So like, technically, I was like in the presence of like somebody semi-famous without really recognizing that he was semi-famous. Like he's just stood there every week teaching these 14, 15, 16-year-old kids to just play guitar, play bass, play drums, get in band settings. And yeah, man, it was awesome. But I mean, that was a little bit of a tangent, but around that time is when I started getting into the heavy metal stuff and strictly Metallica. And that's when I started getting a bit more shreddy in terms of what I was playing. So in terms of my guitar playing at the time, everything was just like riffs and speed. Can you play as fast as possible? Looking back, I was probably very sloppy, but I absolutely loved it, man. Like especially going to those into that rock school thing every week. It was on a Thursday night, and then I think it was a Saturday night every 5 or 6 months or something. We had this little concert, like I was saying, and yeah, man, it was awesome.
That's great. I remember, I feel like it was just in the last little while, it was some archive footage, or maybe I was reading an article with James Hetfield, and he was talking about in the 80s when they were watching bands play, in LA, I believe. He was like, all right, they're doing that. But he's like, what we're going to do is play faster. That was like, because he's young. I mean, I don't know what age he was at this time, and I'm a Metallica fan. I'm not the biggest; there are bigger ones, but did see Metallica in concert just before COVID. Killer freaking show, man. I mean,
Yeah, I can imagine.
yeah, they were having so much fun. Don't get me started, but it was great because it's like you can just see. Imagine James when he's like, let's just say approximately 20, right? So young guy, and he's like, all right, well, to blow them out, we're just gonna play faster. And good Lord, yeah, that's what they did.
Yeah. Yes. So like exactly, and it felt like the next step of natural progression, like from ACDC. Like there was, you start off with some of the simpler songs, like Nothing Else Matters, Enter Sandman wasn't too difficult to start picking up, and then it just got faster and faster. And then there was one night of playing this this gig arrangement thing, and on the other stage, the bigger stage, which was the main like concert hall, there was a Metallica tribute band on that night. I can't remember what they were called. I think they were called Damaged Inc.
Okay, nice.
And obviously the guy was interested. We were on a bit earlier because their gig doesn't start till like 8-9 o'clock, and this is 6 o'clock, so we're on the smaller stage off to the side. And the guy from the tribute band came in to like watch all these kids play, basically. And I did a Metallica song on the stage. I can't fully remember, but it was something like this. And I just remember thinking, like, I want to play Battery by Metallica, but obviously it's one of their faster songs. And this singer of this guy must have heard us say that, and from the Damaged Inc. band. And he was like, my guitarist, we don't cover Battery because my guitarist finds it too fast, which was a little strange because I thought, well, if a Metallica cover band, I thought they would try and at least cover some of their best songs. But he was like, if you want to try and do it, I'll sing it. And I was like, is there a drummer here who can play Battery? And we just kind of like assembled on the stage, and it just started riffing off to Battery, and this guy started singing the song. It was absolutely awesome. Like, so got a bunch of like 14-year-olds and this like 30-year-old bloke singing the song like James Hetfield. He was really good as well.
That's all, man. Did you do that on video? Were your parents like there with a camcorder? I guess
there's probably some footage somewhere. I don't know if there is or not, to be honest. I would probably need to ask my dad if he ever got like the old video cameras out and recorded it. But it's I remember it. It was the same night that I had to play Sweet Child of Mine as well, and I was kind of dreading the solo because I like at the time, like, I didn't think I could sort of replicate the Slash thing, but yeah, I managed to pull it off anyway. And that was an amazing night. Like, to be fair, probably one of the best nights in terms of me like playing in front of a crowd. And it wasn't even a lot of people. It was probably just full of parents and a few friends. But it's so fun when you're 15, 16 years old. It is like you said earlier. It's a brilliant concept. I think you should bring it back.
You may have to bring it back over there. What? All right. So I'm curious. I mean, at this age, you're playing some pretty technical songs. And you're a young guy. How many hours approximately would you say you were playing a day, like practicing at the house or whatever?
I'm a little bit lucky in the sense that learning guitar and picking up guitar came quite natural to me. So I wasn't sat there practicing scales upon scales every night, like running through them and stuff. I kind of learned by just playing stuff that I wanted to play. And I sort of just, and at first it was difficult, yeah. But the more that I kept trying to do it, I picked it up pretty quickly. And there wasn't like a set practice regime or anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to sit down for an hour. I'm going to learn some music theory. And then I'm going to have half an hour of doing my skills. And then I'm going to play some songs that I want. It's just picking up a guitar. At the end of the day, it needs to be fun. Right. So I was picking up a guitar. It was just playing what I wanted to play. And it was probably about 2.5 hours a day. I wouldn't say it was every day, but on the days that I wanted to pick it up, it certainly wasn't a short-lived thing. Like, I always remember, like, my mom and dad were they were going out for the night, for instance, and somebody was coming over just to make sure that I was all right in the house and stuff. And I would just be rocking out on my guitar on a Saturday afternoon, and 3 or 4 hours I would have Metallica concerts on my telly in my bedroom, and I'm just sat playing along with the songs as they're going through. But yeah. It was, and it also kind of picked up a little bit around this time because when I was in high school. Obviously, whatever exams or grades you guys do, we used to do, we still do, but the grading system's kind of changed a little bit. But we do like GCSEs over here, and I took music as one of my options, as like a, like if it's compulsory to do maths, it's compulsory to do English, but I took music as one of my options, and part of the whole side of a music GCSE was performance. It wasn't just theory. So there was certain times of the year when your performance was coming up, and you're about to be graded on it in terms of on an actual exam. So I had to practice for that. But luckily, it was kind of just a case of picking a piece of music that I liked and giving the sheet music to it. And don't get me wrong, I used to just go online, print off. I don't even know if it was right because I can't read music. I used to just print off the sheet music, hand it into my teacher, and just play it the way that I learned it from tab. And nobody ever pulled me on it, so I'm assuming it was right. But so I had them to consider, and that sort of leads into like, it was ACDC, then it was Metallica, and then things started to broaden out a little bit. I discovered a bit heavier bands again, like Killswitch Engage and Trivium, and I still love Trivium to this day. I seen them in concert around 2011 when I was about 15 as well, and I was like, yeah, like proper screaming, heavy guitars, 7 strings, and it's sort of even more technical stuff. But then there was a side of me that wanted to, like, I knew for a lot of people you had to be into that type of music, and it's not always listenable. And I wanted to be listenable, if that makes sense. So that's kind of when I found my home in like the blues. And it started off with a bit of the more heavier side of the blues, a bit Joe Bonamassa-y, but it was through like Gary Moore. I just remember I was sat one night, I was playing on a game or something in my bedroom, and my dad was sat there. There was like an office at the bottom of the landing, and I just heard this like guitar just wailing, like it was like the guitar was crying. And I like opened the bedroom, and my dad was sat there, and he was listening to "Still Got the Blues" by Gary Moore. And I just remember I was stood over him, and I was watching like Gary Moore like on this performance on YouTube from like 1990. And we both kind of just turned to each other at the same time and was like, that is the best guitar tone I have ever heard in my life. And that was kind of like where it started. Like I started to get heavy into Gary Moore from there. I still loved the Metallica stuff. I still loved the AC/DC, but I was branching out. I had done the chords and rhythm thing. I had done the shredding thing. And now it was starting to get into like feeling and meaning what you play. And then I've never left the blues phase since. That is my home. It expanded from Gary Moore to Stevie Ray Vaughan to Eric Clapton to a bit of B.B. King, some of the older guys, Albert King, but a lot of that is sort of fed through from the likes of Gary Moore and stuff, who picked up because, you know, it passes on from idol to idol to idol. Yeah. And then it was 2012, and I came, and it's funny because at this time as well, as I was picking up the blues stuff, my girlfriend at the time, who was now my wife when we were in school, she was into like all these teen dramas. And on those teen dramas, there's always like a singer-songwriter. And I was like, do you know what? I need to like, I'm missing out here. Like, I need to like win her over like even more. So I started branching out into acoustic as well. So I went from like, in the space of about a year, I went from being in a metal band to being like this guy who just plays acoustic guitar. Like the electric guitar was out, it still picked it up. But I started to get heavy into acoustic stuff. And I had another friend at school at the time who I wouldn't dabble into singing at the time. There's no way that I could sing. So I had this other guy he's a pretty good singer. And we had this school talent competition. We called it like, I mean, you know, the X Factor, right?
Yes.
They called it the school X Factor.
Nice. Which
was basically just a singing competition. And he wanted to perform a song. And I was like, okay, well, I'll play the acoustic for you if you want to sing it. And then yeah, that sort of, it just started expanding. That Christmas, my mom and dad bought me a Taylor 214 CE. So that was like my my acoustic guitar of choice for the next like 4 or 5 years. And regretfully, now looking back, I didn't have a lot of space in my bedroom, and I was a bit lazy, you know, like I'm a teen at this point. Like, my guitars were all cased away, either under the bed or like in the case against the wall, and my acoustic was always out. So whenever I wanted to play guitar, I was picking up the acoustic guitar more than the electric guitar. And like, I can't believe I actually did this, but for about 5 years, hardly any of my electric guitars got touched, sadly. But I discovered John Mayer, and this guy changed my life. I know there's a lot of stick. Like, he's a bit like Marmite over here. I don't know if you know what Marmite is.
I don't.
It's basically like this. It's this spread. But I mean, to be honest, I don't really dabble in it much myself. Like, you put it on toast or bread or whatever.
Okay, marmalade? Is it
a little bit like that? But it's got a distinct taste. It's called Marmite anyway. There's a saying. It's like Marmite. You either love it or hate it.
Okay, right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know he gets a lot of stick, like especially like on the internet and stuff. But for me, he is like, if I want to put it this way, if somebody says to me, you're on a desert island, you've got an iPod or an iPad or whatever, an iPod, I'm going back in time now, but it's only got one artist on, who is it? It's John Mayer for me, because it covers absolutely everything from the acoustic stuff to the folkier stuff to being like the modern day blues hero for me. And that's branched off from Gary Moore and the others that I listed earlier. And then I discovered him, and the obsession's still there, put it that way. But luckily now I've got quite a varied music taste. Like, it's kind of come full circle. I did one phase, I did the next phase, and then the next one. And I'm at the point now where I just kind of like everything. And it's a little bit like I said earlier, in the sense that one thing that I learned in each phase, or a couple of things that I learned in each phase, is kind of just peaked now, so that I'm just this accumulation of all those different things that I learned while I was in each obsessive phase of learning and playing guitar, really. I still play my acoustic a lot, but also the electrics well and truly back in the fold. I think about 5 or 6 years ago, my wife bought me this guitar. So this is my American Professional Stratocaster. It's not the new version of the Professionals where they updated the pickups. It's the very first one after they discontinued the Standard, I think. But this has kind of just been like my home for like the past 5 years, picking up the electric guitar. Again, inspired by, you know, the likes of Clapton, John Mayer. And this is what really got me back into playing electric, thankfully. So, you know, I kind of owe her a lot for getting me this. And yeah, I would brand myself a Strat guy of all things now. I kind of want to add to the number of Strats that I've got, but you know, cost of other things these days. But yeah, that's so that's kind of like, I call this my electric baby.
So like, being a big John Mayer fan, is his PRS Silver Sky on your list? I mean, or no?
Yes, the controversial Silver Sky. There's certain features about it that I like, and there's certain features about it that I don't like. I understand the concept of why he did it. I don't think Fender there was a big thing up in the air when he left Fender. I think he wanted to sort of like modernize the Strat for like new players and like future players, with like not only colors, like, but sort of like ergonomics and things. Yeah. I couldn't justify £2,400 on a Silver Sky, but I will admit that when the SE version of it got announced, was it early this year? I think it was early this year, January this year.
Yeah, and they're less than half or a third of the price.
Yeah. when the SE version got announced, and because it still had John Mayer branded on it, I did purchase one.
Oh, okay.
But after, because I got married this year as well, so I was saving up for my wedding. After some, I used some of the wedding fund that I had saved to buy this SE Silver Sky, and after thinking about it for a while, I cancelled my order because it was on like I think it was a 3-month lead time because it was just a mass influx of orders. And I was one of the first ones to order as well, from Andertons, which, you know, they've got a fantastic YouTube channel. Like, I watch a lot of their stuff. But yeah, I was one of the first to order. I got told it's going to be 4 weeks. But in those 4 weeks, I kind of talked to myself and been like, I've got a Strat upstairs. Like, what am I doing? Like, I'm only buying this for the name. I have played one since, and not a core model, but an SE model.
Mm-hmm.
And what I will say about it is, at the price point that it's at, I justify it in the sense that I think it bridges the gap between a Fender Player Mexican series and an American Strat. I think it bridges the gap between the two, which puts the price point exactly where it needs to be. Mm-hmm. Like the neck, it's the neck. I don't know about the pickups. I'm not entirely set on those. But the neck is just unbelievable.
Is that okay? All right. I've only heard great things about it, and then a little more proof in the pudding, and then a couple of friends have one, but I haven't picked it up.
So I was just going to say that's kind of like my consensus on it anyway. But sorry, Carrie, what were you going to ask?
No. Well, I mean, I had to ask because that's your current guitar hero or top guitar hero for you. So
top guitar hero for sure. Yeah.
So what else are you dabbling in right now? Isn't it funny how your tastes change? And what's great is about, and this is very, very common for everyone's musical journey, as you diversify, it makes you a better player, makes you appreciate music more. And it doesn't, I mean, like, you're a Metallica head for life, no matter what, even if you're playing folk music forever and you don't play any more Metallica, like, that's not getting out of your blood. It's part of it.
Yeah. So I'm kind of at the point now, like I said earlier, where I'm kind of just an accumulation of a bunch of those phases. I'm very much, I got into like songwriting a bit because when I said that I wasn't a singer, I still don't brand myself a singer by any means whatsoever. I think I'm much better at guitar, and even still I could get better at guitar. I think you're always learning, but singing is not, I feel like I'm good enough to get away with it. Like, I started doing a bunch of gigs around here, which was just like cover songs, just to earn a little bit of extra cash. But that sort of ignited me kind of to want to do write my own songs.
Yeah.
And writing my own songs came from, like, it could just be a random day and I'll be like, oh, I really fancy listening to like some old school Gary Moore, or I fancy listening to this, or I've heard this. And for some reason, like, if I get inspired by something that way, I try to write a song similar to the vibe that I'm enjoying in the moment. And it's almost like, by failing to try and sound like somebody else, I get a song out of it. Like, I'll start off with the intention of the song sounding like this, and then it comes out sounding like its own thing, which I think is probably the best thing in the world. It's like, that is my philosophy now. Like, if I try and sound too much like something, naturally I just end up sounding like myself. It captures the same vibe, if that makes sense. Yeah, so like, there was a song that I wrote earlier this year, which just so happened to be the one that Ian shared on LinkedIn. And I was trying to the way that it sort of starts for me is like, I don't have I've been that guy before that gets Google out and is like, what comes first, the guitar or the lyrics? That, like, there's no set structure for me to write a song. Like, it could take months, it could take a day. Like, I wrote that song in a day. I kind of like to, when I think of lyrics, it's easier for me to think of, and I'm a pretty happy guy, but it's easier for me to write a sadder song than it is for me to write a Happy song. Like to this day, I can't really. I don't know if it's something about the bluesman in me as well that wants to sort of just like do some like cool guitar stuff and sort of like a minor vibe. I kind of struggle with happier songs, but I sat down that day and I kind of write lyrics from a perspective of things that I know from like, as if I'm a spectator in somebody else's life.
Sure. Yeah.
But then I imagine how I would feel if I experienced what they've went through. And I write it from that perspective, even though it's not me, if that makes sense. And that's what helps me the most with lyrics anyway. In guitar, the guitar just kind of like, again, I don't sit down and go, oh, this song's going to be in A minor. It's going to do this. It's going to change to this chord. Like it just kind of just happens. I use my ears a lot when I'm writing a song. I don't really, I'm not a massive theory head. Like, yes, I know like some of the scales and stuff. But I think you can learn a hell of a lot more from just using your ear and listening. And that would be like my one tip for anything. Like, there was when I was in the shred phase earlier in my life, and everything was like harmonic minor, like minor, Hungarian minor, and I'm learning all this weird and wonderful thing, like stuff. It was very much like, oh yeah, and the next note is like over here, so I've got to make sure like I'm hitting that note over here, and just listen. Is that like? And I learned that when I kind of got into my 20s, and the blues helped with that because obviously, I think. A lot of my playing now it's not about being fast. It's about sort of, I think more is told through your playing by letting it breathe. So if you just slow down, listen to the timing, play the notes you want to play, but mean them, and then make sure like there's a lot said in the pause between notes. That's all I'm going to say. Like, and I sort of live on that. And I don't overdo it. I'm not standing there waiting like, oh, I'm not playing guitar. I'm just, but do you know what? You kind of know where I'm coming from. I feel like.
And I would recommend someone that I'm listening to more and more of, Roy Buchanan. And I don't know if you've listened to Roy, and man, he can just, he can bend a string like up, like 8 inches of a fretboard. I mean, it's just, if his fretboard was this wide, he could bend a string. It's amazing, but often less notes are more.
Yes.
That theory, man, not all of his music is that way, but certainly a number of his songs are. And it's like, wow. I mean, he did bend a string. So he's getting, various notes out of one pluck, let's say, but it's really amazing. I think it kind of ties in to your point. That's what I'm thinking of when I'm hearing you describe what you're doing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And like for a bit of context, when I was writing that song, it's called Feeling Blues Not Worth It For You. I was listening to a lot of Gary Moore again at the beginning of the year, and it was a bit of Joe Bonamassa, and I was kind of getting like that sort of like blues, but hard, like hard rock merger of a vibe. But then I also heard like John Mayer released an album last year called Sob Rock, which was basically just a bunch of like 80s inspired tunes. And there was like, he brought back that old school like chorus sound from like the 80s. And I was like, man, I absolutely love that. Like chorus is back. So then I went through a period of like 2 or 3 songs where everything's pretty clean on chorus, and a couple didn't survive, but then I did get one song out of that I liked. And I don't write songs for any other purpose than a bit of fun, to be honest. That's all it is. I can look back and go, oh yeah, I remember I was inspired by that. I came out with this. It's cool to listen back to, I don't promote it too much or anything. I'm not into that. I just do it for the fun of it. It's
a great way to be. You're in a special spot, man. Like no pressure. You're just enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
What are you playing out now? I mean, what's kind of the status of any public appearances?
Very, very much. It's kind of diminished now. I think I never really recovered from it after COVID, to be honest. Sure. Especially like I've just kind of become a bedroom player. I mean, work is increased, and
you got married. You have to report.
Got married.
Yeah, man.
I did it. So I pick up the guitar a lot, but it's very much just for my own enjoyment at home these days. And I'm happy enough with that. And if an opportunity ever comes up in the future where somebody says, look, do you fancy joining a band or playing guitar? If it fits around, my life and working schedule, absolutely, I'm up for it. But for now, I'm just content just, doing it for fun, because ultimately that's why I started. So,
all right. So I know you've got one or two more guitars back there. What is kind of, you want to take us on a little tour, or what's your go-to right now? And it may be that your Strat is always your number one at this point.
Yeah, so the Strat's always the number one. But again, when I feel like picking up the acoustic, this is the most expensive guitar that I own. When I first started my job and I left university, I said to myself, I want to buy a guitar that I'm going to have for the rest of my life and never sell. And it is this, which is my Martin HD 28. It's the electronics version, so it's got the LR Bags Anthem pickup in it. But yeah, man, this guitar is everything to me, to be honest. And I play electric more than I play acoustic, but when I pick this up, like, I've had so many compliments on this guitar when I've went to a couple of Buskers nights, and yeah, man, it speaks for itself, really. A lot of money to invest on a guitar, especially when I was, just starting out. A lot of people when they get their first job, they're like, I'm going to go and buy a good car, but no, I just went and bought the best guitar that I could afford.
That's a much smarter move than
much smarter
money
move.
on the car.
Yeah. And then again, I was like, I felt so limited because I got rid of quite a lot of my guitars, like the guitars that I referenced earlier, the RG Prestige and my Kirk Hammett Signature. They kind of just phased out. The SG had long gone at this point, and it was last year. And my wife asked me what I wanted for my birthday. And I was like, do you know what? I just want some money towards a guitar. I want something with humbuckers. What pairs with a Strat that's got humbuckers? It's the other famous guitar. It's a Les Paul. I don't have the money, or we don't have the money for, full-on Gibsons. But Epiphones have come a long way now. And she bought me this, which is the Epiphone inspired by Gibson Les Paul Custom. And it's quite funny, actually, because I always say that my Strat is my main guitar, but the last 3 or 4 songs that I've picked up and written and wrote solos for are all on this. So them really my main guitars. I do have this funky little thing that when I was learning back in the day, when my dad got carried away, and we used to go on holiday. He bought me this little Hofner travel guitar, which is, there's next to nothing to it. It does have 24 frets though, which is quite incredible, to be honest. It's basically just a neck and nothing else. But yeah, the strings I don't think the strings have ever been changed on this. I couldn't tell you the last time I played it. It's more of a novelty thing for me now. I've got sometimes when some family come around and the kids come around, they're like, oh, I want to pick up the dinky guitar. Go ahead. And so that's kind of like the extent of where I'm at now. I've got my humbucker stuff. If I want to do like a little bit of Metallica metal kind of stuff with Gary Moore, I've got my Strat stuff, which is kind of like my home on electric guitar. But it's funny because I was having a conversation with Ian last night as well, through LinkedIn. I am actually in the market for, I want a 7-string. I've been listening to some of my old school metal stuff, and I just think like if for those odd times that I want to just pick up and riff out, I want one. I've never had one, so I want one. So that's probably going to be my next purchase.
Sweet. All right. Well, if you need recommendations, I've got a friend who used to, a LinkedIn buddy, Wyatt Abershinsky. I think he almost exclusively played 7 strings for a period in his life, and I could be totally making that up. So if Wyatt sees or listens to this, and whatever, I lied, but he was a big 7-string player. So you might have some good advice of what good one to get for cheap.
Absolutely, I'll take any recommendations I can get at the moment. I went, funnily enough, because I had I kind of came a bit full cycle with amps as well. I had like a, what did I used to use? I couldn't even remember what I used to use when I was practicing when I was younger. This is completely gone from my brain, but a few years ago when, you know, the Boss Katana came out, is like, and there was this massive hype, like, it sounds like a tube amp, and but it's not, and it's cheap. And I was like, I want one. So I went and got one. And then when I moved out and bought this house, I gave that amp to my dad, just on the odd times he fancies picking up his guitar and plugging it in and rocking out a little bit. And I bought myself a deluxe reverb, Fender Deluxe Reverb, because again, I was into the, you know, the whole shimmery cleans, John Mayer, Stevie Ray Vaughan, put a tube screamer in front of it. Problem is, COVID hit, and I have a 22 watt tube amplifier, which is very loud. I couldn't even get the volume past 1 before the windows would start shaking in the house.
Yes.
So I was like, I'm not really getting the most use out of this amp. So I sold that. And I bought, I was like, I still like the sound of it. I just wanted to open up a bit more. So I went and bought the Tone Master version that they came out with a couple of years ago, because it's got the built-in attenuator at the back. And I was like, well, I can put the attenuation right down. That can crank the amp. And I loved that thing. It was great. I had it for just over a year, but I actually sold it last night because I got to the point now where I'm like, I'm trying to only keep things that I need. I love acquiring gear more than anything, but at the same time, I've got to be sensible. And it was kind of a one-trick pony, and I wanted something that did. I'd rather have something that did everything good than something that did one thing great.
Got it.
So I came full circle. And this morning, I went and bought another Boss Katana. Because to be fair, for the money and what you get out the amp, it's phenomenal. I mean, if I had all the money in the world, I would absolutely love like a Victory, like what is it, a D40 or something, or a P40, I can't remember, or a Two Rock. I would absolutely love a Two Rock custom reverb, or a Morgan or something boutique, but I don't have $3-4 grand to drop on amps. Sure. Like, especially if I'm sat in the bedroom just playing for enjoyment. So I'm back with the Boss Katana. But it's cool. Like if I fancy riffing out and dialing in a metal sound, it's there. If I fancy doing some clean stuff, it's there. So it's kind of covering.
The clean's pretty good.
Sorry, what's that?
Are the cleans pretty good on the Boss?
The cleans are pretty good, like, to be fair. I can dial in something very close to my Fender Deluxe. And that's saying something. For like £400, I paid for it. And it's got obviously all the onboard effects and stuff, which I bought a foot switch for it, which kind of acts as like a mini pedal board, so you can act it. I haven't even fully delved in it yet. I'm probably going to do that tonight or tomorrow, but from what I've seen and what I've heard when I quickly plugged it in before, absolutely, yeah, I'm more than happy with what it can offer for what I need it for. And it's super loud as well. Like I had it on the 0.5 watt setting, and bearing in mind it's got 100 watts. Like, and I turned the master all the way up, and like it was absolutely blaring. Like it was so loud. So if there's ever a time I do need a gig, I'm not breaking my back lifting my Tube Deluxe. I'm not messing around with 800, 900 pound other amplifier. I've just got this trusty 300, 400 pound thing that does everything good. So that's kind of like where I'm at right now.
Seems like a good space to be, man. And that's funny. You've only had it for a few hours. You've already chatted.
Yeah.
Man, well, I don't know. I feel like we're probably at a pretty good wrapping point, dude. This has been a great conversation. Did we leave anything on the table that I didn't ask about that you may want to share?
I mean, if you want to ask what guitars in the future that I would love other than just a 7-string, I mean, my absolute dream guitar would be, I've always wanted a Fiesta Red Relic Stratocaster. There was one time when I was getting into like all the bluesy stuff, and it was just like Gary Moore did a version of Red House, and it was absolutely unbelievable. And then David Gilmour on the Live Pulse DVD when he's playing that Comfortably Numb solo, like absolutely phenomenal. And it's like there's something about like a Relic Fiesta Red Strat. So like that's that's like my one guitar that in the future I absolutely like. I'm holding out for that. Like, obviously, in an ideal world, it would be like a 1963 or 1964. But realistically, I'm kind of looking at a Fender custom shop. Let's be honest. So
Okay.
we'll
Yes.
see what the future holds there. But yeah,
and
then
that is going to be in addition to your Olympic white, your white Strat back there, right? You're not going to part with that, of course.
I'll never part with that. I mean, if they're ever, my plan with that is if I ever have any children that get to the point where they love to play guitar the same as I do, then I will probably, because my wife bought me that, I'll probably pass that down. And that's if I get the Fiesta Red Strat, of course. But yeah, I'll never part with that otherwise.
You'll get one.
Oh, I'll get one.
Yeah.
Might have to wait a few years, but I'll get one.
Yeah. No, it's done, man. I can hear it in your voice. There's no problem. It's just a matter of time. We all have those. Be patient, and it will come. And put away your pennies. You know?
Yeah, that's it. That's it,
man. Yeah, go ahead, Adam.
I was going to say there's one musical moment other than. I know you asked me previously about this, like if there's ever a musical moment where you remember listening to something or playing something. I know we touched on when I played on that sort of rock school gig, and that was probably a big moment for me, like in terms of like probably one of the best things that I've done playing guitar. But if there's anything like from a listening perspective, like I implore people to listen to. There was a concert. It's Gary Moore live in Stockholm in 1989, I want to say that it was. And there's an improvised solo specifically on the Empty Rooms version. You can catch it on YouTube. But the first time I heard that, like I actually shed a tear. Like that taught me the meaning of playing guitar and feeling like you tell a story when you play guitar, and when you play solos specifically, it's got to be melodical. It's got to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. It can't just be, to me, like a muffle of sound. And that day I heard that taught me that. So like if there's any recommendation for anyone to, and everyone's got different tastes and opinions, and I appreciate that, but that's the moment I heard that. I was about 15 at the time, and I was like, what is this? Like, I just remember it like to this, and I played it over and over and over again. And I could just imagine, I could imagine being on the stage playing that and just feeling every note the way that he did. Like I was him for a second when I heard it. It was incredible.
That is incredible, man. That is kind of being able to extend your heart and your emotion through your fingers and into your instrument. Not many people can. I mean, that's the epitome of it just is amazing and way easier said than done. Yeah, I totally get that. I was taking notes as you were saying that, so I'm gonna YouTube that solo, man. That's awesome.
It's phenomenal. Yeah, just give it a listen, man. It's so good. Amongst many other things, of course, but that was the one moment for me that. My wife sometimes asks me in the past, like, what's your top 5 guitar solos of all time? And although it's live and it's improvised, nothing will ever top that for me.
Yeah, that's number 1 through 5. It's all 5.
It's all 5. Nah, I've got a few. I mean, if you really want to quickly rattle them off, that would be number 1. I absolutely love, in terms of a solo album, Freebird is a classic. I would say the Comfortably Numb live pulse that I mentioned earlier before. Where the Light Is concert by John Mayer. The Gravity or the Slow Dancing Room solos. And, a fifth one's quite hard. I'll probably have to incorporate some sort of metal tune somewhere because there was, do you know what? I'm going to say John Petrucci from Dream Theater, right? When I had to do my GCSE piece, I learned a song by him because it's entirely instrumental called Glasgow Kiss, and it was probably to this day still one of the hardest things that I've played. I would probably put that there, or Tornado of Souls by Megadeth, because that solo is a classic.
Done. Got your top 5 list written down, man. This is great. Yeah, I'm glad you included some metal there at the end. If you hadn't, I was going to be like, well, we need to reevaluate this list, Adam. Oh man, brother, this has been great. We're gonna wrap things up. Hang out with me though offline because I've got a couple of follow-up questions.
Yeah, we'll do. Thank you very much, David. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, man.
Dude, Adam, my pleasure, man. Great conversation. I know we could keep rolling. We're at the hour mark. I don't know if you're paying, so we'll wrap it here. But listen, thank you for your time. Thanks for kind of pouring out a little bit of your heart too. I mean, it's really sweet and really love what you have to say, man. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for everyone who listens.
They'll love it, man. This is great, dude. Hold on with me. We'll wrap up. Thanks everybody for watching and listening. Really appreciate it, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for tuning in to the Guitar Gavel podcast, and a special thanks to Steve Kuykendall for composing this music and being such the great guy and friend that you are. As a reminder, hit the subscribe button and sign up for our twice weekly newsletter at guitargavel.com.